didn't see you there. How are you? I'm Eve Sturges, host of this podcast called Everything's Relative. I sit here every week to talk with people who have been affected by modern DNA testing. Often, it is because people think that tracing their ancestry sounds super fun, but then the results tell them lots of things that are not fun, or at the very least, confusing. Welcome to the NPE community. That stands for Misattributed Parentage Experience. That's a mouthful, and that's why we abbreviate it to NPE. And sometimes we also say N as in Nancy, PE, and then everyone is totally confused about whether we're using M's or N's. And to make things easy on everyone today, let's just say they both are correct. How is everyone doing? It's been a heavy couple months. Seems like life is hard with tragedy and stress these days in various ways. Although maybe by the time this episode airs, things will feel a little bit less hard. I sure hope so. I hope no matter what, you're all taking care of yourselves out there. Here's something I was thinking about. Was there ever a time in history when people said, these times are very normal and everything is going exactly as it should be? Because I feel like we or people, everyone is saying we're living in strange times a lot lately. Have we always said that? Is that a part of being human on this earth? One part of being human on this earth here in America is celebrating Father's Day. How was that amazing transition? If I have played my cards right, this weekend of this episode is Father's Day. As you can imagine, Father's Day brings up lots of thoughts and feelings within the NPE community. All NPE stories are different, but the most common denominator is that people find out their dad isn't their dad. And let me tell you, that is a very wild experience, my friends. It happened to me. It might have happened to you or someone you love. This weekend can be a lot. So please be good to yourself no matter what. Let yourself chuckle at those terrible necktie Hallmark cards, or roll your eyes at the golf jokes, or cry, whatever it is you need. Best friends Maryll and Culley bonded over having very similar dads. Then they bonded when they both found out they were part of NPE families. And not only that, but they both found out through sibling connections. So, see if you're following here. They both grew up with their biological dads, but they were contacted by adult siblings they never knew about, and their dads may or may not have ever known about. I said from the beginning that I wanted to get everyone's perspective, and so I was so grateful when Maryl came to me with this story, because she wants to talk about what it's like to be contacted from the other side when an NPE reaches out and says, hey, your dad you grew up with is my dad too. Siblings are having as much of an experience as the NPE, but from a different place, and I think it's important to talk about it. So that's what we did recently. Culley is sitting outside somewhere in Los Angeles, and you can hear birds chirping. Maryl is sitting in Brooklyn, and you can hear the subway racing by. Just kidding. You can't really hear the subway. Let's just go ahead and roll it, okay?
But hey, let me talk to you about something else really quick first. Did you know that I consider myself a casual vegetarian? Yeah, when I'm not making this podcast, I'm also not eating meat. Whether you're a vegetarian or not, you may have discovered non-dairy creamers, and I love oat milk. So I'm going to tell you real quick about Willa's Kitchen. Willa's was founded by two sisters who were tired of plant-based milks that were mostly made of artificial, highly processed ingredients and loads of sugar, rather than actual plants. Plus, their grandmother Willa's recipe used real organic ingredients to create a deliciously smooth oat milk, and they thought, why not bring hers to the world instead? As they started on their entrepreneurial journey, they kept learning more and more about the way plant-based milks are normally made. Heavy processing, loads of food waste, and lots of funny business, including ingredients like rapeseed and canola oil that they didn't want to be drinking or feeding their kids every day. The biggest shocker they found was that oat milk is typically made with the oat sugar, and the best part of the oats are filtered out. This resulted in oat milk with a super sweet taste without all the benefits of the oats. Willa's is made with the entire oat, which gives it a rich, smooth taste and maintains all the oat's protein and prebiotic fiber, which makes Willa's zero food waste. It's not just a healthier, more sustainable milk. It's super tasty. And I can tell you, listeners, they sent me a box, and I'm loving it. Willa's has been highlighted in Bon Appetit not once, but 3 times. Find Willa's oat milk at willaskitchen.com. That's WILLASKITCHEN.com or on Amazon. If you use the promo code Everything's Relative, you get 20% off, and you'll be supporting this podcast. That's promo code Everything's Relative to get 20% off. Okay, thanks. Back to the show.
You guys are here because you both are coming from the perspective of having siblings reach out to you based on your parent. Wait, maybe I should shut up. Maryl, you tell me.
Okay. So my story is two surprise siblings coming forward at different times. One was known and buried, a secret that was buried, that came forward right as, like, it was a domino effect of, he reached out to my dad. So my father is responsible. And by the way, I prepped for today by listening to Papa Was a Rolling Stone, just to get in my mindset, little temptations to get it rolling. Called my dad, said, I'd like to meet you. Or no, rather, his mother called my father to say, he wants to finally meet you. My dad hit his head on the stone floors of his home. And that trickled that, rolled out the rest of his health issues that plagued him for the rest of his life, which was probably 7 years. So he passed away in 2019. The storming of the Capitol day is when I, for some reason, was motivated to look at Facebook, and I keep a very, very soft focus on Facebook. And someone had friended me. I didn't recognize the name, saw they were from my hometown, and didn't think anything of it and just bypassed it. And my sister had texted me to say that this woman had reached out to her saying that she knew our father. So then I went back and looked again and looked at her, and I was like, okay, let's get real. She's not reaching out to say that our father was a great mentor or of anything of the sort. And so my sister, who's 6 years older than me, she's fully my sister, was holding on to optimism, and I was like, no way. I knew it. When there was one, there's going to be two. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay.
Culley has similarities, but extreme differences as well. So Culley, take it away.
Amazing.
Well, sure. But I'll just add that the kind of I think the interesting thing, and maybe why Maryl and I are here together, is this unbelievable symmetry. Like, Maryl and I have been friends for besties, lived in multiple cities together, been myriad of artistic projects, and just best friends for 25 plus years now.
Yes.
Both of us having these sort of very flawed alpha men as our fathers, and who play this kind of significant role in our life.
Yes.
And all of this, so my father was like this just incredible, super alpha guy until he wasn't, and then everything fell apart super quick. Same with Meryl's dad.
Yep.
And then this DNA discovery of hidden siblings happened, and our father's respective deaths and the discovery of the siblings all happened within a year. It happened for both of us basically at the same time.
Right.
We've been kind of processing and grappling all of this stuff together, and so the compare and contrast of the experience has been wild, because that this is happening to both of us at the same time. But it's also been a great source of it's been as hard and as much as there is to sort through, we've been able to sort through it together. So
that's amazing. I didn't realize. I mean, I feel like Maryl probably mentioned something along those lines, we have parallel stories, but I can't imagine being a person going through this kind of experience and saying you're never going to believe what happened, and then the other person is actually I can tell you exactly that I know how that feels.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that mix of, because I was the first to find, I got the first taste of it, and no one was surprised. I mean, when I was like, hey, look, it turns out I have a brother. No one was surprised. And so then when Cull's like, guess what? I wasn't surprised either. But still there's that mix of, yes, I can say I wasn't surprised when I can look at it all, like really seeing my darling father for who he was. But at the same time, there is still that shock of what?
Yeah. Well, I think that even if you have evidence or like information that tracks, that makes it all logical, we're not raised in that paradigm. There's no framework for growing up with like, you might have siblings, or like they might, like, there's no way to not be surprised. I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say. Like, there's no, so even if you were like, yes, we might have siblings, even if you did kind of, I still just don't think our brain, like, we're not open to those dynamics.
Yeah. And we certainly don't understand what to do with them.
Yeah. Right. So therefore,
and with that is, we were both put in positions where, we didn't get answers.
Right.
And so, when the health started to tank, he was somewhere in the middle of like that island that's in the middle of dementia and aphasia. So speech was just gone, like it was just not there. While someone could say that's convenient, given, because a lot of people are looking at him with a lot of questions.
Sure. I hadn't thought to feel that cynical, but
so at the same time, it's incredibly heartbreaking for said half brother to wait till his mid-adult life to want to be curious about who his biological father is and to reach out. And when he does reach out, this is who he meets. Is incredibly heartbreaking. They seem to find their way in the 7-year window that they had, but no one really still has answers. And so that's another thing that like Cull and I could spend hours on speculating and piecing together timelines and things and to see what makes sense.
Right. So Culley, we know Maryl's synopsis. So give me yours.
All right. So to do this, I just have to kind of give the brief kind of like family history because it kind of starts with, I don't know, well, before I still don't know, like, as Maryl's saying, like, we sit here trying to play detective and piece together from what I know now, but even that is hard. But before this, I knew nothing. The history of my dad's side of the family beyond him was a complete mystery. Like, he literally was a Rolling Stone. This much I knew. Like, so it started with when he was 13, his mother committed suicide, and his father was, I guess, I mean, I don't know, he's very mysterious, but was in prison, was a very bad man, and he didn't know him at all. Remembers going to visit him in prison. But so when his mother died, he and his younger sister both were kind of hurtled into this like foster homes, extended family, a lot of abuse, but like he never talked about it. It was just, he made allusions to it, his troubled childhood, but I think he never could deal with it. He was always running from it, literally and metaphorically. So, and then he got drafted for Vietnam, and then just took off and went on the run and ran basically his whole life. But so the story picks up, he landed in upstate New York where he met my mom, and they had me in short order. And so then I kind of know his story from there, but nothing before. The DNA story starts as he's also in this kind of in-between phase. His issue was around heart stuff. He had a stroke, at least one stroke, which kind of really crippled him. He was a guitar teacher, and he couldn't really teach guitar anymore. He didn't have any money, and it was a really grisly last couple years of his life. And during that time, he's getting sicker, and my half sister, who I know, I've known her since I was little, but she's a half sister, his daughter. And this is, as also similar to Maryl, all this comes out of this like 60s, 70s, like whatever, man. Like this was he and
people were partying.
He and my mom were already married, but had my half sister a couple years later with another woman, and they were all living together, at this time.
It was a key party.
Yeah.
Or something.
Something like that.
Fondue. It was all happening.
Probably not keys because they were like, anyway,
open door policy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So she and I, my sister and I, we were kind of estranged when we were together when we were real little. And then we were estranged for most of our childhoods into our early adulthood. And then just kind of circumstance kind of brought us back together as adults. And then we became super tight, and we've been super tight. But she has a daughter who's mixed race and very, like, they have no idea what the ethnicity was. So they did a 23andMe to just find out, just out of curiosity about her daughter's ethnicity, and but didn't mark their profile, private or whatever. And
why would you?
You don't think about these things. And sure enough, she got contacted by our cousin, who is the daughter of my dad's sister. So the sister also, obviously, through the trauma of their childhood, she and I knew this because my dad had this kind of like a couple weird conversations, telephone calls from his sister in distress out in California when we were kids, but he didn't want to deal with it. And so he just never dealt with her. And she died. She lasted long enough that she didn't die really early, but she died definitely of alcoholism and liver failure sometime in the early 2000s. And so her daughter was like on this mission to try to find out anything about the family that she didn't know either, because nobody knew, and her mom didn't tell her anything either. So she found my niece's, in my sister's name, DNA profile, and reached out and was like, "Oh my God, do you know Ron Johnson, our dad?" And she was like, "Yeah, that's my dad."
My dad.
So and this, they live close to each other. My sister's in Boston, and cousin was in Connecticut. So they met up and like met each other and were really like, formed a relationship. So
because, I'm sorry to clarify, the cousin, she's your cousin.
Yeah.
Wanted to know more about her family.
Yeah.
So when she said, "Do you know this man?" and your half sister could say like, "Yeah, that's actually my dad," she could say like, that was not a part of any sort of like rumbling shock. It was like, "Great, I want to know about my uncle and his family." Okay, got it. Sorry, that's just for me. Maybe that was just, maybe everyone else was following that. Totally fine.
So cut to, this was like about 5 years ago, and just as my things really started to go south for my dad, and then in September, I think, of 2017, I was going to go down to Florida. My half sister, who I've known, was also going to come down with me because we were going to kind of take care of him he was going to get bypass surgery. He needed like quintuple bypass or something. So we were going down there to take care of him, and our cousin found out that we were going down and was like, "Oh my God, you have to make him take a DNA test." So she bought the kit.
I totally forgot.
Sent it with Aurora down to Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, where he was supposed to have this surgery. Only he didn't have the surgery because the day that I showed up, which was the day before his surgery, I found him on the floor of his apartment, kind of like stroking out or something with like a new series of strokes, and had to call an ambulance. And so we spent the week that he was supposed to be getting surgery in ICU, and he's recovering, and he's barely kind of sentient, but he kind of came to and we were able to kind of talk with him. And at the end of this week, I was like, "Okay, Dad," he could barely talk. can you spit in this? And he's like, trying to spit into it, but he can barely has motor function. And I'm like, no, you got to spit a little more, Pop,
What a champ. Oh man.
So I capped that and we sent it off, and then I had his profile. And then from that test, I got a thing saying this person, it's his profile. It was like, this person is, 99% your parent or child, because they do the,
right.
They just know the DNA relationship. So I reached out to this person who turns out to be my brother.
Okay.
And the way that we established that, like, first he was very wary. He had done a DNA test, not necessarily to find, he didn't know who his birth father was at all. His birth mother never told him and never had any relationship with my father, but he knew that he was adopted. He was wary of any kind of connection, and we had some back and forth. I found his Facebook, and oh no, this is before I found his Facebook, but we had some on the chat in the 23andMe or whatever. What's the other one?
Ancestry.
Yeah.
And he, I said, okay, let me ask you this. He wasn't sure. And I was like, do you have blue eyes? And he said, why do you ask? And I said, because it was our father's, he has his, strongest genetic trait. It was passed down to me, and it was passed down to my half sister. We all have these blue eyes. And he's like, oh my God, yes. And so does my daughter. And he was like, Facebook me. And so we Facebooked him.
Photo time. For the record, anybody who is listening and you cannot see Culley right now, he does have fantastic blue eyes. I can see them through the Zoom.
It's true. It's true. They're legendary.
They're sparkling.
It's the California sunshine.
That's right.
So I looked at his pictures, and it was like no question. And more than it, like I showed him to Maryl, I showed him to my wife, and we were like, oh my God, he looks just like our dad, like way more than I do. Which is
saying something.
He got all of the features. So we struck up a fast relationship. He was down here in LA on just traveling with his wife, and we met each other, and it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. The thing being that he's never met our dad in his life and acts just like him.
Wow.
I mean, all these like crazy behavioral things that are like, it's not just the eyes, it's like the way he tells a story, or the way his hands, the way he uses his hands, and like all this stuff is like, it's like exactly our dad, which is wild.
Didn't you piece together a timeline of when Mike was probably was surfing in the same ocean water that your father was surfing in?
Yeah, they may have been surfing the same breaks at some point in North Florida which is like crazy.
What? Oh, whoa.
And probably like stood on the surfboard with the exact same bear stance, like craziness.
Right.
Bears craziness. Of men. So that turned out great. I mean, it was great. Love my brother. And but then not even 6 months, my dad is still alive at this point, but he was in a nursing home and just, could barely talk. And then Stacy, our cousin, got contacted somehow. I can't even actually remember the exact how it happened on the DNA sites, but a sister came out of the woodwork, who my half sister, another of my father's children, who, this is where it gets fun because she's 3 months older than I am.
Oh.
and this is where it's like, so I called my mom with the surprising news. Hey, guess what, Mom? There's another one. Ha ha ha. We could. And I said her name is Winema. That's her name. And she said, "Oh, Winema. Hold on 1 second." And she went off to get something and came back with, they were all hippies. That's all this stuff is in hippie days. And she came back with Winema's, she had done her astrological birth chart as a baby. And I was like, what do you mean?
Your mom
did
her, okay.
She has mine my secret sister Winema and our other half sister. Those are the only charts she still has, and she has Winema's. And I was like, what do you mean? How do you've never even told me that you...
Time out. How many times has your mother moved since making these charts?
I know,
she has a whole new life. And she can, like, not only does she have these charts, but she can immediately access them. Okay, continue.
Yeah, she knows right where they are.
Yeah, and so I was like, Mom, what do you mean? She's like, oh yeah, we met when you were a baby. We drove out to California, which I remember telling the story about them driving out to California. I didn't know why, but it was to meet my dad's previous girlfriend and the Winema. And so
the daughter sister.
And so my mom knew. So this was a not a betrayal, but my mom and I have a very trusting relationship. But this was like, 3 years ago, and went through my whole life. She never told me. So, but there it is. So that's the nutshell DNA story. And from that, we kind of were able to piece together this timeline of my dad's Rolling Stone through, because he said, the few things I knew, he said that he went up to the Pacific Northwest to log. That's what a lot of guys did when they evaded the draft. They would go up and earn some scratch and disappear for a while up in Oregon and Washington.
They do trimming now, but.
So exactly. And so now, this traces because 1968 was when he would have been up there. And that's when he had this, looks like kind of one night stand or something like that with my brother Mike's mom. And then he went east, which we know. And then he landed in New York City, where he impregnated Winema's mom. And then shortly after that, must have broken up with her and gone upstate, where he met my mom, and they got married for a number of years and had me. So I was able to kind of piece together a sort of timeline for my dad that I never knew. And then since then have kind of met a few more family people that have come out of the woodwork to kind of start piecing together. I'm still working on the childhood aspect and what happened back there with his mom and stuff like that. But just as this is where, another symmetry with Maryl's situation is, like, all of this happened as both Mike and Winema, my brother and sister, were discovered as my dad was, in this
declining,
state of declining, in which he couldn't even really understand what was going on, and certainly couldn't, speak to it or respond to it or meet them. Mike didn't care. He didn't want to. He doesn't. I was like, do you want to? He was still alive at this point. I was like, do you want to fly down and meet him? He said no. Winema knew about him, knew who he was, knew his name, but didn't. She felt uncomfortable, and then she was kind of like, yeah, I kind of want to, and then he died.
Yeah.
So she came to his memorial, which was the first time that I met her, and my mom was there, and my half sister that I've known all my life. So it was this wonderful kind of family meetup. And since then, we've had these sibling get-togethers, and it's been like magic. We're all kind of similar people. Go figure.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can feel the magic, like just shooting out of any picture of all of them together, and with just their bright open faces, and like open artsy, fully formed people. So
which has been hard in talking about this with Maryl, because like her experience has been diametrically opposed in terms of her.
So to rewind, just on my dad's quick timeline, to my knowledge, everything has been contained to Pittsburgh. All of it, what he was up to. However, my folks split. My mom, my dad divorced when I was 1 or 2, I think it was finalized by the time I was 2. So what we're looking at 75, 76 is when they were cleaned up and done. And he met my stepmother shortly thereafter, but they had a very tumultuous on again, off again for quite some time. And he also figured out, like, being in Florida during the winters is great. So he would go down to Florida often, and he was double barred, and he was very proud of that. So he could get himself and his friends out of trouble and possibly practice any other sort of law when he's down in Florida. So my theory is there have to be Florida kids out there, but I'm not in a rush to find out.
Culley, did you say that Mike was from, or your dad was in Florida?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad was in Jacksonville.
Now would be a good time for me to tell you guys that my biological father is from Florida.
See,
Florida.
Something
Florida.
here, man.
Something's in the water.
Florida, man.
Pardon this interruption. You know something I've been thinking about a lot over here at Everything's Relative podcast? Sex. So let's talk about setting the mood. That's right, the mood. You know, when you want to get intimate, or perhaps after you've gotten intimate, be it by yourself or with a partner, there is something you need to have on your nightstand. MOD. MOD is redefining what sexual wellness and modern intimacy looks like. They are creating a whole new chapter in the outdated sexual wellness industry. MOD makes modern, body-safe, and high-quality essentials for before, during, and after sex. They have a whole variety of products, like vibrators, lubricants, and condoms. Their products are absolutely beautiful, with a lot of attention paid to design, sustainability, and simplicity. Basically, if sexual wellness has a name, it would be MOD. Honestly, these are products you want to be seen in your bedroom, instead of hiding them. And I don't know if you guys know how ad partnerships work with podcasts, but they sent me some products, and let's just say everyone here at Everything's Relative, everyone is satisfied. One of the coolest things about MOD is that it is a female-led Latinx-founded company. Their founder, Ava, created MOD for all bodies, all genders, all races. Dakota Johnson just joined MOD as their co-creative director. Hello! And guess what? You, listeners of Everything's Relative podcast, are getting a treat from MOD. As our partner, MOD is giving $5 off your first order on all products with the code EVERYTHINGSRELATIVE. Head over to getmod.com/everythingsrelative. That's getmaude.com and use Everything's Relative to get $5 off your first order. Enjoy the mood setting.
So the first half sibling that I found out about was in the time, he's younger than, both of them are younger than me, and subsequently younger than my sister because she's 6 years older. But the first one who came forward, that was in the timeline between my stepmother and my dad, and I think that was right in an off point. And it's my understanding that his mom and my dad wanted to keep their respective situations. And so some sort of agreement was made and they carried on. So that is probably right around when my dad and stepmother, got engaged and got married, and they stayed married till his death. The new one who has come forward was in that slim window between my parents' divorce and him meeting, and my father meeting my stepmother. So I guess this was a one-off with her mother, and she, meaning new half-sister, has lived her life believing her father to be her father, her biological father. So this was a complete shock to the system. So I cannot imagine that.
So she is what we call an NPE.
Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
She's the NPE.
What is NPE?
Non-paternal event or non-parental experience. And it's when it's a genealogical term, and it means that one or both of your parents that you believed are not biologically related to you. It's like the word for the realization. It's a controversy. It's not really controversial. It's controversial grammatically because we don't know if you are an NPE or if you have an NPE or if you. So she's the NPE. Like makes the most sense to people for the podcast.
Maybe she's NPEing.
Yeah, NPEing. It's a verb. It could be a verb. She NPE'd.
She's presenting NPE.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay.
So she's been handed a super shock.
Right.
Which again, and it's not like she was a redheaded stepchild.
Mm-hmm.
Her we'll call her dad.
Her birth certificate father is called a BCF.
Yes, the BCF is also Eastern European. So there, so she was not a redheaded stepchild, now getting answers. And she is one of those, wonderful people who take these kids out of just once, much like Culley's niece, just like, I want to know my background. Mm-hmm. Well, here's a surprise.
Yeah.
And I guess her mother tried to deny it for a good bit. Sure. And then finally,
very common.
Yep. And then came forward. But things like she was quickly on the express train of Let's Be Sisters and doing a lot of side-by-side comparison photos of the two of us and things. And I'm riding the local train on it, I really encouraged her to speak to a professional or get deeper support. I was like, I think you need to have deeper conversations with your mom. Like there are things here that you're looking to me to help with. And this is out of my realm here. But again, I'm not in her shoes. I can't imagine that shock. So, but we haven't had these get-togethers or anything with her. The two new half siblings have gotten together, and they do share a lot of similarities in the sense of everybody's in Pittsburgh. They married with children. So they might be on the same side of politics.
And did they both grow up not knowing your dad?
Correct.
So they're both your half siblings. You knew that you grew up with him. Yes. They both have the commonality of not knowing him.
Yes.
But being related. So that's a big one, I think. Mm-hmm. That's probably
they've all hit it off, like their respective spouses have hit off, which I think is great. I'm in full support of them all hanging out. Am I jumping in a car and running back to Pittsburgh? No, not yet. I've been part of, I've shared holidays with, some holiday time with the brother, and his family. And, at first he was really excited about having sisters because he has, half brothers from other relationships that his mother's had. But his primary goal and focus was really to get to know our dad. And I totally understand that. Mm-hmm. And now that he's passed, I don't know. It would probably be a little more, it would be easier if we all lived in the same place. My sister's in Oregon, I'm here in New York. So, but to go through my father's funeral and everything with him there and his family, and they had just had one baby. So there was so much emphasis put on the baby, that was challenging. This is John's grandson. I'm like, well, in theory, yes, it is. But like my father it was never a goal of his to be pappy, and so many of his
they came to your dad's funeral with a new baby and introduced the baby to people as the grandson, and so that became a big focus.
Yeah,
I can see that being really hard.
It was challenging, and I think also they themselves are put in he and his wife were put in an awkward situation because lifelong friends of my father or family members of my stepmother, everybody, people are looking around like, who is this? And it is just like with Culley in the sense of Mike, how similar Mike looks to Culley's dad. My half brother looks, it is shocking to look at him and then, turn to a casket or look at a photo, and see my dad. So a lot of people are looking at me like, what? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, just come over here. I'll explain it all to you really quickly. So it was, I mean, but yeah. So it was a good circus, the viewing days and the funeral, but also the like feeling of being erased slowly, with, well, here are the new people, here are the newer generation. They had, they've had spawn, and it's like, well, yeah, all true. Hi, I've been carrying the water, for 47 years.
I mean, that's just what I was thinking about so much, was that it's so great to actually hear you talk out. We all kind of know these concepts, obviously, but like to hear you talk about it out loud and remind me and remind listeners that the people that grew up with these people, the children of these men, or sometimes women, but children of these men, have a whole life of good and bad, like a full bag of things that they're holding and experiencing when the NPE, or like the half sibling, shows up with expectations or with questions, or, with all sorts of things. It's so important to remember that, like, you have a life, yes, you have a life too. You have a life, but more about, like, not so much about like your schedule, but like your own sort of heart and soul and mind and relationship to the word family and what that means. And I think that gets lost a lot.
That is an excellent point. Two things have come to mind. One is, the initial meeting of half brother. Here he is. He and his wife are driving up to this massive house. I did not grow up in this house, but this is where, my father and stepmother lived for 10 years or so. It's just completely ostentatious, huge house. So here, this kid, he's coming up and he's seeing this, and every family has those shorthand stories that you can tell of, like, my dad was a fantastic long con practical joker. So I have at least a top 5 stories that I can regale anybody with my dad. And I love to tell them because they're fantastic. So we're regaling with all these stories and, about the trips we took and everything. And I wanted to fall through the floor. I was like, this is not a way to welcome somebody into our family, because to me, it just reeked of, look at everything you did not have. And that's horrible. And that's not my intention to get to know him or his family. And my stepmother, to her credit, fully embraced him from minute one, and still has. They are very much in touch, which I think is fantastic. And I know that probably a lot of her grief is circled in looking at him and seeing a reflection of her husband. And so maybe that's where a lot of the drive to tell the stories and everything comes from. And my sister has the sensitivity to it too, of like, let's not paint this insensitive picture of this, like, we were living the high life all the time. And we wanted for nothing. However, there's still the man behind the curtain. There's still challenges to be dealt with. But to go back to how family's defined, that was the primary thing that really struck me about when the half sister came forward, of, she's very, family's very important to me. Family is very important to me. I'm like, sure, it's very important to me too. But again, like, please, let's take a step back and absorb this. And I need you to take some time to figure out what this means for you. I can't define it for you.
That's a lot of pressure on you.
It really, really felt like it. Like,
that's a lot of pressure.
No, there were, my address was found online. And so flowers were showing up on my door. And if you actually know me, you should know, like, always send me a plant. Don't send me funeral lilies. Like, I can't, And when I did ask for space, and she bucked it a lot, because, people don't like boundaries. And family kept coming back to, like, being thrown to me, and my sister too.
As my dad was dying, it was super hard for me the last year, because he didn't have anybody or anything, and we had this, he is a very, profound influence on me. I love the man. He taught me a lot of things artistically, gave me confidence, all these things, but he was never there. And he was always, he was in Germany, he was in wherever it was, but it was somewhere where I wasn't. And then and then as an adult, we kind of like, he was an arm's length relationship. And then suddenly I had to carry the water as he was dying. I had to figure out how to get him on, Medicaid, just the basic stuff, so he didn't die on the streets,
Right.
And I did all that, but I was incredibly angry through that time. And what was interesting to this point of the expectation of family is that the cousin Stacy, who was so like just wanted to piece this family together, was on this DNA mission. And now that she had found it and knew who Ron Johnson was, I had a couple conversations with her, and she was like, you need to let all that go and just love him and make this time, nice for him or something, like I owed him that or something. And I was like, you have no effing idea, and don't tell me like that caused the problem. I, everything with my siblings has been great, but she really wanted this sense of, trying to build back this family that she never had, that was destroyed,
that never existed.
Correct.
It wasn't just that, it wasn't that she didn't, I mean, yes, she didn't have it, but nobody had it. That's sort of like a focus on a fantasy.
Yeah.
And I think also, like I talk about this all the time, and I'm so sorry that it's so repetitive for people, but I'm so interested in language, and like maybe family, when we say you don't believe in you must not believe in family, or like your family, or you just need to love family, like the word family and the concept of family, like we need more words for that, because there's all this nuance about what that means.
Yeah.
And we have no language for expressing that we're processing it. We only have the word family. We sort of have in-laws, maybe like there's no words around it, like we need to have something else that expresses the nuance, expresses all the differences and all the like there's just not enough to express all the struggles. And I think those are good examples, very good examples of that. Question for you, Culley. Do you wish that your mom had told you about this sister your whole life?
Gosh.
Or what would have been different, or what? Did she have an explanation for that?
No.
If you asked, I don't even know if you even asked her.
I did. I was like, Mom, what the F? Her explanation was kind of like, I don't know, son. I mean, it was the time, and she's like, I didn't know what good it would do, or, and I believe that. And I don't know that anything would have been different. I don't know that I would have reached out to contact my sister earlier, or that we would have been able to form any kind of relationship. I mean, one of the nice things now we're finding, like amongst us four siblings, with our cozy siblingness, is one thing that I'm hyper conscious of is like, we probably wouldn't be able to have, like, we're lucky that we all kind of are the same kind of people. We align politically and spiritually and those kind of things. But I don't know that we would have been able to have the relationship that we're able to kind of foster and build now had we been, grown up at each other's throats or whatever,
Totally. I think about that all the time. Yeah. About where people are in their lives matters. We don't have control over it at all, but it matters.
That's the hard thing of seeing half brothers, like, you could see the magic of want of like, oh, if I'd only been apart. And I'm like, I think it'd be really hard to actually be my father's son. There'd be a lot of pressure there that I absorbed, like in terms of sports and achievement and everything. But like, I can imagine, once I grew breasts, that was it. We weren't playing sports anymore. But like, I think to be a son it wouldn't be this dreamy experience per se. I think it would be hard.
Wouldn't just be big houses and practical jokes all the time.
Right. And so but you can't tell,
yeah, you can't.
That's not worth a conversation. So
I had a little bit of it was a bigger conversation, but I'll tell a little bit of a conversation with one of my half sisters. So she said, we don't know what you know about him. And she expressed, and the way she explained it, I can't remember the exact words she used, but she was like, I'm afraid that if you didn't know that he was kind of a bad guy, or like that there was all these faults, all this dark side of him, that you would then be I would be the deliverer of this like really bad news. And that would be really hard. And I don't want to, she didn't want to carry that. And then she said, but if you do know, that's really uncomfortable for me too, because now I don't know what you are wondering and what do you want to ask? And what is my role for you, like in that? And it was just really interesting. I didn't mean to be dismissive of her perspective, but I just had not considered that like she was coming with her own concerns about who he was and what I knew and what that meant for me. She was worried about me the most, but I felt like she was expressing that she was feeling a lot of pressure about what to say, what to say and what not to say. And luckily, a lot of the information is public, so we hung out there. But yeah, I think that's so interesting. Do you know, between the two of you, are you all of these half siblings that did not grow up with your dad? Do you feel like the vibe in general is that they wish that they had? Did they have father figures at all, or?
On my end, I know, but I don't think either of them have any kind of woulda, coulda, wishing, that they had grown up with my dad. My brother had his stepdad. They had I think a difficult but close relationship. And like I said, he didn't have any interest in even finding out who his biological father was. My sister was, I think, she's expressed that she's always been very curious to know who he is, but was never interested in having a relationship or finding him, or wishing that they could have had a relationship.
Maryl, do you know?
I would venture a yes. I think there's some wishful. The half sister situation doesn't sound like it was the most positive in terms of her father figure. Half brother, his stepfather, really played a very significant role in his life, and it was very stable and loving. But I think he felt out of place for a really long time. And I think even just when he finally became curious about our dad, and when he looked him up, and just the photo, like just even seeing a photo of him just clicked. So I think, the desire would definitely.
Yeah. I just occurs to me, there's just like there's no winning. There's just no way that this is ever, I don't know, fill in the blank, but there's just no part, there's just, I don't know what the word is. Like, there's just no winning. That's all I can keep saying over and over again. There's just no winning. Everybody misses something and wishes for something and could have something. And
I think I feel like I kind of wish that they knew him, because I feel like now going forward, and in our relationship, like I'm the one with the knowledge, and in a way that's like kind of weird, because we all have this connection based around this person that I know.
Right.
So my half sister that I know, that I grew up with, she never really knew, and she didn't have the relationship that I did. Never lived with him, and then they tried to kind of piece something together at various times in their life, but never really had a relationship. So I'm the only one. And so we're talking about our connection and this person that we're all connected through, and it's abstract to them.
Right.
And it's not abstract to me. So that's kind of that's hard for me to carry in through this relationship.
I think that's important.
Yep. Yep. No, and really, really well put, Call. I think, it was a twofold of in his decline of, I was already dealing with his dementia. So I'm already set up to be the keeper of the memories and the keeper of the person who's in the shell. So now it's like, I'm even more protective of him in some way, of who this person is and was, like Culley and I come back to this of like reconciling how you love a fragile bull who and who was incredibly flawed, but one of the greatest people you'll ever, like would help anybody, would do anything. Like, how do you reconcile this? And I feel like a lot of that is holding on to the memory, and it's if sharing these things, I lose a piece in some way. Because I don't know if if you can actually get it without really seeing and knowing the person. I don't know. I've been also like joking that Culley and I should take ayahuasca to like so, see our fathers to get some answers.
Let's please do that on the podcast. Can we please let me record that?
I mean, you want ratings, Eve.
I want ratings. That's what's important. Oh, thank you so much for coming on today, just to talk about I think it's so important to talk about every angle. And I think there are still angles that we haven't thought of when it comes to who is being affected and how it affects them and what their own journey is like. So yeah, like this was just awesome. I'm like wondering if I have questions, and maybe some will come up later, but like right now it was like you both like presented these great like sort of mini episodes or something.
And here's a fun fact too. Out of the 4 siblings that have come out of this DNA wonder, neither Maryl and I have taken a test yet.
So I know that you can't see what I'm seeing when I'm with these guests, because that's the nature of a podcast, but it was so fun to be with Maryll and Culley, albeit on Zoom, because you can see and like feel this 20-year friendship between them. I hope you could hear it too, as much as I could feel it. And, take it into their account, their experience as siblings trying to navigate their own thoughts and emotions through an NPE event. Like, I felt like I had a lot to think about after talking with them. I hope you did too. I also hope you are able to have a nice time this weekend, whatever that means for you. If it's a rowdy barbecue or a round of golf, or nothing related to fathers or Father's Day or fatherhood or whatever. It's up, dads, stupid. It's totally up to you. It's still a free country. I will see you next week, or I won't see you, but you'll hear me, and I'll be around. You can always reach out to me using the socials. I'm at Everything's Relative Podcast, and you can email me, eve@everythingsrelativepodcast.com, if you have a complaint, a compliment, if you'd like to share your story, if you have a question. I'm here. You can support me in all sorts of ways, which is extremely helpful to those of us over here in the production department. At the very least, I hope that you can share this podcast with a friend. Thank you for listening. Thanks for being a part of my community. Please take care of yourself. Drink lots of water. And if you need to, know that it's okay to cry. I'm Eve Sturges, and this is Everything's Relative. Bye-bye.
Everything's Relative with Eve Sturges is produced by Eve Sturges and Kaylin Egan and edited by Joy Rumel. Logo designed by Ivy McNally, and music is used